The problem that we're fixing today is going to be with the way that the shop was handled in this tutorial. Okay, the standard shop that Brackeys had required you to create a new reference to each turret blueprint and then create a new method for each and every turret. So we're going to change that. First off, this tutorial assumes that you already have Brackeys 3D tower defense system set up. Okay. Now, if you do have that, or if you don't, you can go and visit his how to make a 3D tower defense game, and then set all that up from there, or you can clone it from his GitHub page by just typing in Brackeys how to make a 3D tower defense. Okay. Now, if you have all that, then we're going to change something. He's got this turret blueprint that you see here. Okay, now this is just a normal class. Okay, it's not built on mono behavior. It's not a scriptable object. It's just this basic thing. You've got the prefab, you get the upgraded prefab, and the cost of it. Now, what we're going to do is create a serial scriptable object for this. Okay, so go into your scripts, go into your turrets folder or whatever, and just change your turret prefab, your turret blueprint into a scriptable object. I use the create asset menu attribute so that I can, like when I go in, I can right click and go to create, and then I have this custom menu, this custom drop down. All right, you don't have to use that necessarily, and then if you just use create asset menu, all that happens is you right click, and then at the top it would say create and then turret blueprint. Okay, so you can do that either way. I use the menu name. All right, so menu name, you get that first drop down with turrets and then new turret blueprint. Okay, I changed this so that we have an icon. All right, so we add in an icon, and then we add in a name. All right, we're not going to use the name today, but this will help for later on. Okay, now you're going to create some turrets and then come back to this. Okay, so I assume you've got some turrets. I've got 6 turrets here, but I'm currently only using 3. If you're doing things the old way, then you're going to have to manually go in and bring the shop into your on-click event on the on your buttons. Okay, and then you're going to have to find the script. Oops, sorry, I put the wrong thing in there. Okay, so you find the script, you go down to shop, you say select turret, and you have to make sure that you're selecting the correct turret. Okay, because all these methods all look the same, and then we have to go and do this for all of them. Okay, so let's make sure that these actually work. Alright, so I've already got my buttons set up. Okay, so at least they work. Obviously I can't place the missile launcher because I don't have enough money at the moment. Okay, so yeah, it works, but let's see what happens when I want to add a turret. Alright, so let's just say I'm going to duplicate the button. So that kind of helps because it's already in a vertical layout group, so at least that gets set up for me where it automatically puts it down. However, it's not really in the order that I want it. Okay, and I can't change that unless I go into the prefab. We can set up a new turret blueprint. We'll say better missile launcher. Okay, so maybe advanced missile launcher. Give it that same missile launcher icon, and then maybe a bullet over it just like it's got right now, and then we'll give it the missile launcher prefab. So it doesn't really matter right now. Okay, let's say it's 1500 instead of 1100. Okay, so let's go back to our shop. We can pop actually we can't pop this back on. I mean, we can't pop our turret blueprint on there because we have to create a new turret blueprint, which is kind of a pain in the butt, right? So I'd have to go in and say advanced missile launcher and then create a whole new method where I go out to the build manager and say select turret to build this turret. All right, so what we're gonna do is change all of this. All right, so all we need to do right now is let's go ahead and make this into a private array, and we'll serialize the field. No one else needs to know about, no other class needs to know about these turret blueprints, so we'll just call these blueprints. We'll still cache a reference to the build manager instance. Instead of having all these methods, we're going to say select turret, and then we'll just pass in a turret type. Alright, so that seems pretty simple. Okay. What we want to do now is get references to those buttons that we have in our shop UI. Okay. Now we're going to create the UI for each of the turrets that goes into the shop. Okay, so I always create a new game object, and then I make sure that it has a, in this case I'm going to use a layout element and ignore the layout that our vertical layout group gives us, just so that I can see it here. Now I'm going to add a button, and I'm going to make sure that it goes into the top 75% of the container. Okay, and I do that by using the anchors. All right, I'm going to create another image and put it in the bottom 25%, and that'll be the background for the name and the price text. All right, typically I use Text Mesh Pro to do my texts, but in this case we can just use standard Unity text. I think Text Mesh Pro looks a lot better. It's got more options. The auto size seems to work better. I prefer Text Mesh Pro, but we're just trying to do a good, simple fix here. All right. So to get access to this information, I think that we're going to have to create a new script. We'll create a new C# script and call it shop item UI. And in there, we'll have references to all that stuff that we just created on that shop item UI prefab. Okay. So we'll have reference to the buy button, to the image that we just created. The image is actually the same thing that we had on the buy button. All right, and then we'll have two texts: the name text and the price text. All right, the button will be we'll have public access to the button. All right, now first let's talk about this initialize item method here. We'll call this from the shop. All right, and we'll pass in a turret blueprint. And then we'll give public access to the button. We'll give access to the shop to that buy button. All right, so the shop will determine what we do with the buy button. When we pass in the blueprint, we're going to change our turret sprite into the blueprints icon, and then we'll set the name text to the name of the turret in the blueprint, and the price text to the cost of the turret in the blueprint. Okay. Let's go back to our shop, and we're gonna create a for loop. Okay, so we're gonna instantiate a bunch of prefabs of that shop item UI. Okay, so let's go ahead and prefab this, and we can remove the layout group. Okay, so we'll go ahead and put that into our prefabs. All right, perfect. So let's delete this one, go back into the scene, go to the shop, go into our script. All right, and we're going to get a reference to that game object item UI prefab. And then for the number of blueprints that we have, we will create that item prefab, that item UI prefab, and initialize it. And we're going to parent it to this object, to the shop object. And from the item object, we're going to get the item slot UI, excuse me, the shop item UI. We'll initialize it with the blueprint at this index. Okay. Now we're also going to get the button from the shop UI. So actually what we want to do is cache the shop item UI and then we'll initialize it, and then on that button that we have, the buy button, we're going to on-click add listener. Now this is where we use this select turret method, okay? But it's a little bit confusing because now we're going to use a delegate, all right? So if you've never seen this before, this is an observer, and we're gonna have it listen for whatever method we throw to it. Okay. Normally you would send it a unity action. Okay, but we can send it delegates. All right. So it's kind of like a function pointer, where whatever's you're just sending it a list of things that whenever the button is clicked, it'll do that. Delegate allows you to send things more dynamically, because like for example in a unity action, maybe you could only send an action of a certain type. Okay, here we can send basically whatever we want, so we could send actually multiple methods inside of these brackets, inside of the curly braces, but we're just going to send this one method, select turret. Okay, and we're going to send the blueprint at this index. The problem is that if we use I is actually it'll pass it by reference. So it'll reference the memory that we've created for this integer I. So at the end of the for loop, that memory says whatever the length of the blueprints is. Okay, so even though at the first iteration we're trying to send 0, because we're sending a reference to what's in the memory, right? At the end of the for loop, the memory says that it's at 5 or 6 or whatever. So we would unintentionally be selecting the wrong blueprint. So what we need to do is create another integer and set it to what I is right now. Okay, so then it'll send whatever this is. So this gets the information at the memory in I, and then it gets that info, and then we send that instead of I. All right, so I know that's kind of a bad, convoluted explanation, but here in the delegate, we're passing by reference as opposed to passing by value. Okay, pass by value would send a copy of what's at I at this iteration. Okay, but I digress. All right, so let's save that and make sure that it works. You need to make sure, and I didn't do this, we need to go back to our shop item UI, and we need to make sure that we get the button into the script. We need to get the button actually holds an image, so we'll put that into the turret sprite, then we'll get the name text in there and the price text. Okay, so let's save. Let's make sure that on our shop we actually have a reference to that shop item UI prefab. Okay, I've got a bunch of turrets. All right, I created a bunch of turrets. All right, and I've already put them into my blueprints array. Okay, so when we press play, we should see all those item UI prefabs instantiate here, and it's a vertical layout group. So if that layout element is off, and we can actually remove that. So if that's off, then we'll see, in this case, 6 new buttons emerge, and it didn't work. So the reason that it didn't show up was because the shop item UI was set to 0 width and 0 height. Now I've gone ahead and put, instead of a vertical layout group, I put a grid layout group and set the cell size to 75 by 75. Now you'll see all of your turrets, and then you can reconfigure like the the way that they're set up. Okay, so I think the grid layout group gives you a little bit more dynamity. All right, so now what you might want to do is say, okay, well, yeah, that's nice that we have all this new dynamic way of putting these turrets in, but I don't like that my most expensive turrets are in the middle of the stuff. I want to see things organized. Well, let's use link and go ahead and fix that up. So using system link, we're going to go ahead and do that one time in the in start. Okay, so we'll say that blueprints now equals blueprints dot order by, and we'll go by descending. Okay, and we'll say item I dot cost, and we'll set that to an array. All right, so now they'll be ordered by cost, least expensive to most expensive. Right? Excuse me, that actually set them most expensive to least expensive. So you should do order by and then leave out descending. So descending will go from highest to lowest. I should have known that. All right, so hopefully this tutorial has helped you out. If you have any questions, just let me know in the comments.